The first man who reached for her never got to touch her. His fingers were less than an inch from Elara's arm.
I said
when
get
the white
back
wolf
now!
Came out of nowhere. Snow exploded
Be
beneath
ready.
its paws. The
Step
creature
away from
crossed
it.
the frozen courtyard
He won't
in a
hurt
blur of
anyone.
white fur and silver eyes, slamming between the young woman and the royal soldier with such force that the man stumbled backward. His sword came halfway from its sheath before the wolf turned
Control
its
your
head.
beast, girl.
One low growl rolled
He
through
will
the
not
courtyard.
harm you.
The soldier froze. So did everyone else. Elara stood behind the animal, her hands trembling beneath the sleeves of her plain brown dress. She had arrived at the fortress less than a minute earlier, surrounded by armed guards who had dragged her from a mountain village because they believed she was hiding a dangerous beast. Now that beast stood between her and 40 men, and it was looking at every one of them as though it would gladly tear them apart. Then another guard stepped forward. The wolf snarled again. A third man tried to approach from the side. The animal moved with him. By sunset, 5 trained warriors had been forced backward by the same silent warning. Nobody understood it. Nobody except Elara, because she had seen those silver eyes before. 3 nights earlier, beneath the dark pines of Bellmere forest, she had found the wolf bleeding beneath a fallen tree. She had saved its life. She had never expected it to remember her. But the greatest shock came when the doors of the fortress opened. King Alaric walked into the courtyard. The Alpha King was the most feared man in the northern kingdom. Men lowered their eyes when he passed. Soldiers stepped aside. Even noblemen who hated him measured every word before speaking. But his wolf had never feared anyone. Until now. The king took one step toward Elara. The white wolf lowered its head. Its lips pulled back. And for the first time in 20 years, Fenrir snarled at his own king. Nobody moved. Far beneath the fortress, behind stone no living person had touched for 300 years, something ancient stirred in the darkness. And the first drop of water from an underground spring touched the floor. Bellmere was the kind of village that disappeared beneath winter before the rest of the kingdom even noticed the cold had arrived. It sat between 2 mountains at the edge of the northern wilderness, where black pine trees climbed the slopes and narrow streams disappeared beneath sheets of ice. Smoke rose from crooked chimneys every morning, hanging low over the roofs before the wind carried it toward the forest. There was no royal road through Bellmere, no grand market, no stone walls, only a small cluster of homes, a weather-beaten chapel, a wooden mill beside the frozen stream, and the forest. The people of Bellmere respected the forest. They did not enter it after sunset. They did not follow wolves. And they never disturbed anything marked with the old silver crescent carved into stones throughout the northern mountains. Most villagers no longer remembered why. Elara did. At least, she remembered what her grandmother had taught her. The forest was not empty. It was listening. And if a wild creature allowed a human being to come close when it was frightened or wounded, that trust was not something to be repaid with fear. Elara had lived by those words for most of her life. At 26, she had learned to recognize the difference between hunger and sickness in a fox, between fear and aggression in a wounded deer, and between the ordinary howl of a wolf and the warning cry that meant danger was nearby. She lived in a little stone cottage beside the frozen stream. There were no servants, no family, no husband waiting beside a warm fire. Only shelves filled with dried herbs, clay jars, bundles of roots hanging from the ceiling, and a wooden table worn smooth from years of use. She earned her living healing people who could not afford the royal physicians. Sometimes she was paid with bread, sometimes with eggs, sometimes with nothing. She never complained. That morning, she had spent her last piece of dried meat feeding an old shepherd's dog. By afternoon, the wind had sharpened. Snow began falling. Elara pulled her cloak tighter and walked toward the forest with a woven basket hanging from her arm. She needed winterroot. Without it, 3 children in the village would have nothing to ease their fever. The trees swallowed her within minutes. The sounds of Bellmere disappeared. There was only the soft crunch of snow beneath her boots, the distant movement of branches, and the occasional cry of a raven somewhere high above. Elara knelt beside a patch of frozen earth. She brushed away the snow.
There.
A thin green stem. Winterroot. She smiled. Just what I needed. She dug carefully with a small knife. Then she heard it. A sound so faint she almost mistook it for the wind. A whimper. Elara stopped. She listened. Another sound came from deeper inside the trees. A low, broken cry. She stood slowly. The sensible thing would have been to go back. Every lesson she had ever been taught told her that a wounded wolf was one of the most dangerous creatures in the wilderness. But another cry came. Elara tightened her fingers around the knife. Then she walked toward it. She found the wolf beneath an enormous fallen pine. It was young, though already larger than any ordinary wolf she had ever seen. Its fur was white, not gray, not cream, white as fresh snow beneath moonlight. One hind leg was trapped beneath the trunk. Blood had darkened the snow. The wolf lifted its head. Its eyes found hers. Silver. Bright. Terrified. Elara stopped several steps away. The wolf growled. She did not move closer. I know. Her voice was soft. I know you're afraid. The wolf's lips curled. Elara lowered herself into the snow. She placed the knife beside her. Then she slowly opened both hands. Nothing in them. No weapon. No rope. No food. Just empty palms. The wolf watched her. Minutes passed. The wind moved through the pines. Elara remained still. Finally, the animal lowered its head. Only slightly. It was enough. Elara moved forward. She crawled through the snow until she reached the fallen tree. The wolf's breathing quickened when she touched the trunk, but she kept her movements slow. The pine was too heavy to lift. She searched around it. A broken branch lay nearby. Then another. She found a wedge of stone and pushed it beneath the trunk. Her hands quickly went numb. She pushed. Nothing. She tried again. The wolf cried out. Elara looked at its face. I know. She pushed harder. The trunk shifted. Only a little. But it was enough. The wolf pulled its leg free. It stumbled backward. Elara expected it to run. Instead, it collapsed. She immediately crawled toward it. The wound was deep. She tore a strip from the inside of her cloak and wrapped the leg. The wolf watched every movement. When she finished, Elara sat back. You should go. The wolf did not move. Before I change my mind. For the first time, the animal blinked slowly. Then it stood. Pain flashed through its body. Elara reached out instinctively. The wolf stopped. Their eyes met. Then it turned and disappeared between the trees. Elara remained there long after it was gone. She did not know that someone had been watching from the ridge above. She did not know the wolf belonged to the royal bloodline. And she certainly did not know that by saving it, she had just stepped into a secret that had survived 300 years. The next morning, royal riders entered Bellmere. Their horses were covered in snow. Their armor carried the black and silver crest of King Alaric. The villagers gathered outside the chapel. Elara stood near the back. The commander read the order. A dangerous white wolf had attacked a royal hunting party near the northern border. 3 soldiers had been injured. The animal was considered extremely dangerous. Anyone who saw it was ordered to report its location immediately. Elara felt cold despite the fire burning inside the chapel. The wolf. She knew it. The blood on its fur. The injured leg. The silver eyes. She said nothing. That night, someone scratched at her cottage door. Elara opened it. The white wolf stood in the snow. She stared. The animal dropped something at her feet. A piece of red cloth. Elara bent down. The fabric was torn. A silver thread ran through its edge. Then she saw the symbol. A crescent. The royal crescent. Her grandmother had drawn it once in an old book. The mark of the first kings. Elara barely had time to understand what she was holding. Horses thundered outside. She looked through the window. Torches surrounded her cottage. Royal soldiers. The door opened before she could reach it. The commander stepped inside. Where is the wolf? Elara said nothing. Girl, this is your final warning. She looked toward the forest, then back at the soldiers. I don't know. It was a lie, and everyone knew it. The commanders searched the cottage. They found the herbs, the blood-stained cloth, the medical supplies. But no wolf. The commander studied Elara for a long moment. You are coming with us. She looked at the fire. At the small home she had known all her life. Then she pulled her cloak around herself. She followed them. As the horses began moving toward the capital, Elara looked back. At the edge of the trees stood the white wolf, watching. It did not follow immediately. It waited until the royal caravan disappeared into the snow. Then it turned north, toward the fortress. The fortress of King Alaric had been carved directly into the mountain. Its walls rose from black stone. Its towers disappeared into clouds. Bridges connected one side of the mountain to another, hanging above deep ravines where snow never melted. By the time Elara arrived, night had fallen. She expected a prison cell. Instead, the soldiers took her into the great courtyard. Hundreds of people were already gathered. Guards, nobles, servants, royal hunters. Everyone was staring. Elara stepped from the carriage. A soldier reached for her arm. That was when the wolf appeared. It came over the northern wall. Nobody saw where it came from. One moment the courtyard was full of shouting men. The next, white fur flashed across the snow. The soldier barely had time to raise his hand. The wolf landed between them. Its paws dug into the snow. Its shoulders rose. Its silver eyes fixed on the soldier. The man's face drained of color. Back away, someone shouted. The wolf snarled. More guards raised their weapons. Elara stepped forward. Don't. The word barely left her mouth. But the wolf heard it. Its ears shifted. Elara slowly placed a hand against its shoulder. The entire courtyard fell silent. The animal did not move. The soldier stared at her. How are you doing that? Elara shook her head. I don't know. Then the great doors opened. King Alaric entered. He wore no crown, only a dark coat, a sword at his side, and the expression of a man who had spent too many years carrying burdens nobody else could see. He was taller than Elara expected. His hair was black with strands of silver at the temples. A scar crossed his jaw. He looked at the wolf. Then at Elara. Something changed in his face. Fenrir. The wolf did not turn. Alaric took one step forward. Fenrir growled. A deep sound. Not loud, but unmistakable. The king stopped. Nobody breathed. For 20 years, Fenrir had slept beside Alaric's bed. He had ridden beside him into battle. He had guarded his son. He had never once challenged him. Yet now the wolf stood between the king and a village healer. Alaric's eyes narrowed. Everyone lower your weapons. The guards hesitated. Now. Weapons disappeared. Fenrir remained tense. Alaric looked at Elara. You know him. Elara swallowed. I found him injured. Where? In Bellmere Forest. Did you hurt him? No. Did you use magic? Elara frowned. No. The king studied her. Then he looked at Fenrir. The wolf finally turned its head. Their eyes met. Something silent passed between them. Alaric's expression hardened. Take her inside. Fenrir moved. The guards froze. Elara stepped toward the animal. It is all right. Fenrir's gaze stayed on her. Then it allowed her to walk away. The king noticed. So did everyone else. Inside the fortress, Elara was taken before the royal council. Lord Varen sat nearest the king. He was an elegant man with pale hair, narrow eyes, and a smile that never reached them. He looked at Elara as though she were something unpleasant found beneath a table. The animal's behavior proves she is controlling it. Elara looked at him. I have never controlled a wolf. Varen leaned forward. Then explain why it obeys you. I can't. Convenient. King Alaric lifted one hand. Enough. Varen bowed. The questioning continued. Where was she born? Who taught her medicine? Who were her parents? What did she know about the royal crescent? When Elara said she knew almost nothing about the symbol, Varen's eyes sharpened. But Alaric noticed. Later that night, the king stood alone in the courtyard. Snow fell around him. Fenrir lay near the wall. Alaric looked toward the corridor where Elara had disappeared. Why her? Fenrir lifted its head. The wolf gave no answer. But somewhere in the fortress, Elara was awake. She had been given a small room. There was a fire, warm blankets, food. Yet she could not sleep. Something felt wrong. She opened the window. Snow drifted through the air. Far below, the forest stretched into darkness. Then she saw Fenrir. The wolf was sitting in the courtyard, watching her window. Elara smiled faintly. You're supposed to be resting. Fenrir lowered its head. She closed the window. Neither knew that someone else was awake. Lord Varen stood in a hidden chamber. On the table before him lay the wooden pendant he had taken from Elara's cottage. The silver crescent caught the candlelight. His expression changed. For the first time, the calm mask disappeared. The bloodline survived. He closed his fingers around the pendant. After all these years. The next morning, an old archivist named Malin secretly approached Elara. She was small and bent with age, but her eyes were sharp. You should not be here, Malin whispered. Elara looked confused. Why? Because some stories were buried for a reason. Malin glanced toward the door. Then she told Elara about the Keeper of Wolves. 300 years earlier, a healer had lived beneath the northern mountains. She had been able to calm wolves. She had protected the kingdom during a winter so severe that rivers froze beneath the moon. Then she vanished. Her family vanished with her. The royal records were sealed. Elara shook her head. My family has always been from Bellmere. Malin looked at her. So was hers. That night, Elara met Alaric in the courtyard. He was kneeling beside an injured raven. He carefully wrapped its wing. Elara stopped. The feared Alpha King was sitting in the snow with a bird trembling in his hands. You shouldn't touch it like that, she said. Alaric looked up. Why? You'll frighten it. His eyes moved to the raven, then back to her. I was told fear makes animals dangerous. Sometimes. And sometimes fear only makes them hurt. For a moment neither spoke. Then Alaric released the raven. It flew awkwardly into the trees. He stood. You saved Fenrir. He allowed me to. A faint smile touched the king's face. You are the first person who has ever said that. Before Elara could answer, something moved behind her. A shadow. A blade flashed. Fenrir came from the darkness. The assassin struck. The wolf intercepted him. Steel cut through white fur. Fenrir fell. Elara screamed. The courtyard erupted. Guards seized the attacker. Alaric dropped beside Fenrir. Blood spread across the snow. Elara pressed both hands against the wound. Bring me cloth. Nobody moved fast enough. She tore her sleeve. Alaric held the wolf still while Elara worked. Her hands were covered in blood. Fenrir's breathing became shallow. Stay with me. The wolf's eyes opened. Silver. Fading. Elara pressed harder. Stay. The wound finally stopped bleeding. Fenrir breathed. Alaric looked toward the captured assassin. The man's cloak had fallen open. On his shoulder was the crest of the royal guard. Alaric's face went still. The assassin had come from inside his own fortress. The danger was no longer outside the walls. It was already standing beside him. Fenrir survived the night. Barely. For 3 days, Elara refused to leave his side. She slept in a chair. She ate when someone reminded her. She changed the bandages whenever blood soaked through them. Alaric came every night. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he simply stood near the doorway. He watched Elara work. The same woman who had arrived at his fortress, wearing a poor village cloak, now sat beside his royal wolf as though the great animal belonged to her. Fenrir had stopped growling at Alaric, but only when Elara was present. The king noticed. So did Elara. One morning, she found an unfamiliar plant growing between 2 stones near Fenrir's chamber. Its leaves were dark green, almost black. She touched one, then pulled her hand away. Where did you find that? A royal physician frowned. It grows beneath the fortress. You should remove it. Why? It is poisonous. The physician laughed. That plant has been here longer than the fortress walls. Elara looked at him. Then whoever built this place knew something you don't. Alaric heard the exchange. He ordered the plant examined. The results changed everything. The plant was not poisonous. It was part of an ancient healing mixture. A mixture that had disappeared from royal medicine centuries ago. Malin brought Elara to the sealed library. Prince Rowan secretly joined them. Rowan was 21, tall and quiet, with his father's dark eyes but none of his father's hardness. He had spent most of his life trying to earn Alaric's approval. Instead, he had learned to hide his feelings. Elara recognized that immediately. "You don't have to be like him," she told him. Rowan looked at the old books. "I don't know how to be anything else." She smiled. "Then start by deciding what kind of man you want to become." The words stayed with him. Together, they searched the library. Hours became days. Finally, Rowan found a sealed manuscript. The cover carried the crescent. Inside were drawings, wolves, a woman kneeling beside a spring, a mountain, and beneath them a single name, the Keeper. Elara turned the page. Her breath stopped. A family tree, 300 years old. At the bottom was a name. Her family name. She stepped backward. "No." Rowan stared at her. "Elara." "No." She shook her head. "My grandmother never told me." Maybe she didn't know. Elara touched the page. Her fingers trembled. A part of her wanted to run. Another part wanted answers. But someone else had already found the same secret. Lord Varen. He stood in a dark corridor outside the library, listening. That night, he met with men in black cloaks. "The girl is the descendant." One man lowered his head. "Then kill her." Varen shook his head. "Not yet." He looked toward the fortress walls. "If she is truly the Keeper's blood, killing her may awaken what lies beneath the mountain. Then what do we do? Make the king fear her." The plan began slowly. Dead birds appeared near the village road. Then sick foxes. Then wolves. Animals began abandoning the northern forest. Elara saw the first sick wolf near the fortress. Its mouth was bleeding. She knelt beside it. The animal was barely alive. Black dust covered its fur. She touched the ground. Mineral powder. She had seen it before. In old mining records. Forbidden mines. The mountains beneath the kingdom had been sealed generations ago. Alaric listened as she explained. "Someone is mining there." His jaw tightened. "Impossible. The animals are sick because something is entering the water." Alaric looked toward the mountains. Those mines were closed. Then someone opened them. They investigated. The evidence led directly toward Varen. Black dust stained his boots. He claimed it came from an old road. Elara did not believe him. Neither did Alaric. But before the king could act, Varen moved first. A royal guard burst into the council chamber carrying a dead wolf. Its fur was blackened with the same mineral. "She did this." The guard pointed toward Elara. "She poisoned the animal." Elara stared at him. "I didn't." Varen turned to the council. "Her bloodline is forbidden." The room erupted. Alaric rose. "Enough." But the nobles demanded action. For the first time, the king faced a choice between the woman he was beginning to trust and the kingdom that depended on his authority. That night, he went to Elara's room. "You're leaving." She looked at him. "Am I being exiled?" "No." His voice was low. "I'm giving you a chance to survive." He opened a hidden door. Behind it was an old passage. Fenrir waited in the darkness. Alaric looked at Elara. "Trust me." She did. They entered the passage. The door closed behind them. The air grew colder. Ancient carvings covered the walls. Wolves. Healers. The crescent. Elara touched one. The stone warmed beneath her fingers. A faint light spread through the carving. Alaric stepped closer. The entire wall began glowing. A hidden door appeared. Then the mountain shook. Stone crashed behind them. Alaric was thrown backward. Elara fell. Fenrir disappeared through the opening. The passage collapsed. When the dust settled, Alaric was on one side. Elara was on the other. She reached toward him through the broken stone. Alaric. His hand stretched toward hers. Too late. The final stone fell. Darkness swallowed her. Elara woke alone. The first thing she heard was water. The second was Fenrir breathing beside her. She opened her eyes. The wolf was lying against her, exhausted but alive. She touched its fur. "You found me." Fenrir lifted its head. Then it began walking. Elara followed. The passage descended deeper into the mountain. The walls were covered with carvings. Women beside wolves. Children carrying herbs. Kings kneeling before enormous, white animals. Elara stopped before one carving. A woman stood beside a spring. Above her was the crescent. Below her were wolves. She placed her hand against the stone. Warmth spread through her fingers. Suddenly she saw something. A memory. Not hers. A woman running through snow. Men carrying torches. A royal advisor holding a sword. The keeper kneeling beside the spring. Her family behind her. The advisor raised his blade. The vision disappeared. Elara stumbled backward. She understood. Her ancestors had not vanished. They had been murdered. And the royal court had buried the truth. Fenrir growled. Something was moving ahead. They entered a vast underground chamber. A spring flowed through the center. Its water was dark, poisoned. And beside it lay the largest wolf Elara had ever seen. The pale guardian. Its fur was almost translucent. Its body was scarred. One enormous paw rested against the stone. When it lifted its head, the entire chamber seemed to tremble. Fenrir stepped forward. The guardian growled. Elara moved between them.
No.
Both wolves looked at her. She approached the enormous creature.
Slowly.
One step, then another. The guardian bared its teeth. Elara stopped. She saw the wound. Black mineral had entered its side. The creature was not attacking. It was suffering. She knelt. Her hands shook. But she reached forward. The guardian lowered its head. Its nose touched her palm. The chamber went silent. Elara began cleaning the wound. The guardian did not move. Behind it, a stone door opened. Inside was an ancient seal. The original royal seal. Elara lifted it. Words appeared beneath the crescent. Only the keeper may restore the spring. But restoration required blood. Her blood. She understood what that meant. The spring would take her life. She closed her eyes. Then she heard something. A distant roar. Alaric. He was alive. Somewhere above. She could feel him. The mountain shook again. Varen's men had entered the tunnels. Explosives were being placed around the mines. They intended to destroy everything, including the evidence, including the spring, including Elara. Above ground, Alaric fought his way into the mountain. He had refused to believe she was dead. Rowan joined him. Father and son moved together through the darkness. For the first time in years, they fought side by side. Then they found Varen. The advisor stood near the explosives. You were always too weak, Varen said. Alaric drew his sword. You betrayed the kingdom. I saved it. You poisoned its land. I created a crisis. Varen smiled. When the wolves attack, the people will beg for protection. When the rival army arrives, they will beg for a stronger king. Alaric advanced. Varen attacked. Steel rang against stone. The battle moved toward the collapsing mine. Alaric was struck. He fell. A wall cracked above him. Stone crashed down. He could not move. Then Fenrir appeared. The wolf raced through the tunnel. Alaric looked at him. Find her. Fenrir turned.
And ran.
Deep beneath the mountain, Elara held the royal seal. She could hear the spring. She could feel her heartbeat weakening. She understood. If she used the seal, she might die. If she did nothing, the kingdom would fall. She thought of Bellmere, the old shepherd's dog, the injured raven, the wolves, Rowan, and Alaric. Then she pressed the seal into the stone. Pain tore through her body. The spring exploded with light. Water surged through the mountain. The black mineral dissolved. The walls shook. Elara fell. Fenrir reached her. Alaric followed moments later. He found her unconscious beside the spring. He dropped to his knees. Elara. She did not move. He lifted her into his arms. For the first time, the king's hands trembled. Fenrir stood beside them. Then one by one, wolves emerged from the darkness. Dozens. Then hundreds. They gathered around the spring. Silent. Watching. The ancient water began glowing beneath Elara's blood. And Alaric realized the woman in his arms had just sacrificed herself to save the kingdom that had once wanted her dead. Elara woke 3 days later. Morning light rested across the infirmary floor. She opened her eyes. The ceiling blurred. Someone was sitting beside her. Alaric. He had not shaved. His coat was still covered in dust. He looked as though he had not slept. Elara tried to sit. He immediately helped her. Don't. She looked at him. Is the spring safe? His expression softened. Yes. And the wolves? Alive. She closed her eyes. Relief moved through her like warmth. Then she noticed something. Alaric was still holding her hand.
He released it slowly.
Outside, bells began ringing. Not celebration. Warning. War was coming. Varen had escaped. He had crossed the northern border and joined the rival army. He knew every weakness in the fortress.
He knew the mountain roads.
He knew about the spring.
And he wanted it destroyed.
The kingdom prepared for battle. But Elara discovered something worse. Scouts reported that thousands of wolves were moving toward the battlefield. Not attacking. Being driven. Enemy soldiers were using fire and noise to force the animals south. If the wolves reached the army, frightened soldiers would slaughter them. The balance would collapse again. Elara stood before the war council. We have to move them. Alaric shook his head. It's too dangerous. If they stay, they will die. I won't send you into that forest. You don't own my life. The room became silent. Alaric stared at her. Elara's voice softened. That is what the old kings did. They decided what the wolves needed. They decided what the keepers needed. They believed protection meant control. She looked at him. You changed. He said nothing. Now, let me do what I know how to do. Alaric finally nodded. It was the hardest decision he had ever made. Not because he did not trust her. Because he did. Fenrir went with her. The forest was burning at the edges. Smoke filled the air. Arrows flew overhead. Elara walked deeper into the trees. She carried a small container of water from the restored spring. The wolves followed. At first there were only a few, then dozens, then hundreds. They came silently.
White, gray, black,
Young,
old,
injured, hungry, all following the scent of the sacred water. Behind them, the battle began. Alaric stood on the fortress wall. The rival army poured across the valley. Rowan fought beside him. Father and son moved together, not as king and prince, as family. Varen reached the mountain. He knew the hidden entrance. He carried a torch. The spring chamber was only minutes away, but Elara was already there. She stood beside the water. Fenrir between her and Varen. The advisor laughed. You. Elara looked at him. You nearly destroyed the kingdom. I was going to rule it. You would have ruled ashes. Varen raised his weapon. Fenrir growled. He attacked. The wolf moved first. The blade struck stone. Fenrir knocked Varen backward. But the man had one final explosive charge. He threw it toward the spring. Elara ran. She caught it before it landed. The charge burned her hands. She carried it away from the water, then dropped it into a deep stone pit. The explosion shook the chamber. Elara fell. Fenrir dragged her away from the flames. Varen staggered toward her. Then Alaric arrived. The king's sword was raised. Varen smiled. Do it. Alaric could have killed him. Everyone expected it. Instead, he lowered the sword. Take him. Soldiers seized Varen. The evidence of his crimes would be witnessed by the kingdom. He would face judgment publicly. Not vengeance in darkness. Justice in daylight. Outside, the invading army collapsed. Without Varen's guidance, their forces scattered. Rain began falling. The first drops struck the burned earth. Smoke rose. The wolves emerged from the forest. They stood beneath the rain. Elara walked toward the spring. The ancient seal had changed. The crescent was no longer closed. It had opened. Beneath it were new words. The keeper is not chosen by blood. She is chosen by compassion. Elara stared at the inscription. All her life, she had feared that her blood had made her different. Now she understood. Her blood had never been the true power. Her choices were. She turned. Alaric stood behind her. Fenrir stepped between them. For a moment, the king looked at the wolf. The wolf looked at him. Then Fenrir lowered its head. Alaric understood. The animal had finally accepted him. Not as master. As family. The war ended with spring. Snow disappeared from the lower valleys. Streams returned. Bellmere rebuilt its damaged homes. The northern forests slowly turned green again. But the greatest change could not be measured in repaired walls or reopened roads. It could be seen in the way people looked at wolves. Children were no longer pulled indoors when one appeared at the edge of a field. Hunters stopped chasing them for sport. Villagers began leaving injured animals near the healing houses Elara established across the kingdom. She refused a royal title. At first, I am still a healer. Alaric looked at her. You can be both. So, he created a new position. Keeper of the Northern Wilds. Not a servant of the crown. Not a royal possession. A guardian of the balance between the kingdom and the wilderness. Elara accepted. But only after one condition. The old law that treated wolves as royal property had to disappear. Alaric agreed. The law was burned in the public square. Thousands watched. The same people who had once whispered that Elara was a witch now stood quietly as the ashes drifted into the spring wind. Prince Rowan changed too. He visited the healing houses. He worked beside villagers. He learned herbs. He learned patience. And, slowly, he and Alaric repaired the distance between them. One evening, Rowan found his father standing beside the old fortress wall. You were right about one thing, Rowan said. Alaric looked at him. I taught you to survive. Rowan smiled faintly. You forgot to teach me how to live. The king lowered his eyes. Then he embraced his son. It was brief, awkward, but real. Elara watched from the doorway. Fenrir rested beside her. The wolf no longer growled at Alaric, not even when the king came close. That was how Elara knew everything had changed. One spring morning, they returned to Bellmere. Elara walked along the same forest path where she had once found Fenrir trapped beneath the fallen pine. The tree was still there, but new green shoots had grown across its broken trunk. Alaric stood nearby. Rowan followed behind them. Fenrir moved through the trees. Elara smiled. Do you remember this place? Fenrir looked at her, then disappeared behind the pines. A few moments later, Elara heard tiny sounds. She followed. Beneath the fallen pine were several white wolf pups. They tumbled over one another in the snow melt. Fenrir stood nearby, watching, protecting. Elara crouched. One pup approached her. She held out her hand. It sniffed her fingers, then touched her palm. Elara's eyes filled with tears. Years ago, she had found one wounded wolf beneath that tree. Now life had returned to the same place. Alaric stood behind her. He did not interrupt. He simply watched. Later, near the sacred spring, they discovered one final carving. It had been hidden beneath moss for centuries. Elara brushed it clean. The image showed the keeper standing beside a wolf. Not above it, not behind it, beside it. Alaric looked at the carving. So, that was the truth. Elara nodded. The wolves never needed a master. They needed someone who would listen. She looked at him. So did you. A smile appeared on the king's face. Perhaps. That evening, snow began falling again. Elara sat beside the fire inside the fortress. Fenrir lay near the hearth. Alaric entered. The wolf lifted its head. For one brief moment, Elara expected the old warning. The raised shoulders, the silver eyes, the growl. Instead, Fenrir simply looked at the king, then closed its eyes. Alaric sat beside Elara. Outside, snow covered the towers. Inside, the fire crackled. No armies waited beyond the walls. No assassins hid in the corridors. No council demanded blood. For the first time in years, the fortress was quiet. Elara looked at Fenrir. He's finally stopped growling at you. Alaric smiled. I think I've earned it. She looked at him. You have. Their hands rested beside each other. Neither moved away. Years passed. The kingdom changed. Children grew up hearing a different story about the wolves. Not stories about monsters. Not stories about beasts. Stories about guardians. And whenever the northern children walked into the forest, They were taught one lesson before anything else. Never take trust from a wild creature. Earn it. On a bright spring morning, Elara walked through the forest with a group of children from Bellmere. She showed them how to recognize animal tracks, how to leave food for injured creatures, how to move slowly when a frightened animal was nearby, and how to know when to walk away. The children listened. Then one of them pointed toward the trees. A white wolf stood there, silver eyes, still, watching. Elara smiled. Don't approach. The children stopped. The wolf waited. Then another white wolf appeared behind it. Then another. A whole family emerged from the trees. Among them were young wolves born beneath the same fallen pine where Elara had once saved Fenrir. On the distant ridge stood Alaric. Beside him was Rowan, now a young man ready to inherit the crown. Neither spoke. They simply watched. Elara looked toward them, then toward the wolves. And suddenly she understood something she had not understood all those years ago. The wolf had never been protecting her because she was weak. It had protected her because it recognized something in her that other people had forgotten. Kindness. The courage to kneel before something frightened instead of striking it. The courage to help without asking what she would receive. The courage to trust when fear would have been easier. Fenrir had snarled at every man who approached her. Every soldier. Every noble. Every warrior. Even the king. But perhaps that had never been the whole story. Perhaps the wolf had not been warning her that the world was dangerous. Perhaps it had been waiting for someone worthy of standing beside her. Elara watched as Alaric walked down the ridge. Fenrir lifted its head. The king stopped a few steps away. The wolf looked at him, then lowered its head. No growl. No warning. Only peace. Alaric extended his hand. Fenrir touched it with its nose. Elara smiled. The kingdom had survived war. The mountains had survived the poison. The wolves had survived betrayal. And the woman who had once been dragged into the fortress as a frightened village healer had become something greater than a queen. She had become the bridge between a kingdom and the wilderness it had once feared. The children ran laughing toward the lower meadow. Elara followed. Behind her, wolves moved through the trees. Ahead, the mountains glowed beneath the morning sun. And beside her, at last, walked the man whose approach had once made the greatest wolf in the kingdom bare its teeth. King Alaric reached for her hand. This time, Fenrir did not stop him. The wolf simply watched, then turned toward the forest. The wind moved through the pines. Snowmelt rushed beneath the roots. And somewhere beneath the mountain, the ancient spring continued to flow.
Clear, warm, alive.
The same spring that had waited 300 years for someone to remember its purpose. The same wilderness that had waited for someone to choose compassion over control. And the same white wolf that had once snarled at every man who came near her now walked peacefully beside them, carrying with it the memory of everything they had survived. Because in the end, the kingdom had not been saved by the strongest sword. It had not been saved by the largest army. It had not been saved by a king. It had been saved by a woman who saw a wounded creature beneath a fallen tree and chose to kneel. And sometimes, that was where the greatest stories began. Not on a throne, not in a battlefield, not beneath a crown, but in the snow, beside a frightened animal, when one person decided that kindness was worth the risk. And that choice changed everything.